there's like a few locations in the US. There's a few like really key spots, and if you take them out, you basically knock out power in the entire country, which is like very worrying infrastructure.
There's nothing up here, right? Nope.
We're at the Bonneville Power Administration, which supplies power to Oregon State and Washington State. Security to get in is extensive. They've made us open up all our bags and cases, our cars. They're searching all of us.
Behind the gates is a power substation, a key part of our nation's power grid. Here, raw high-voltage energy is converted into the electricity that supplies power to our homes, schools, hospitals. Basically, they keep the lights on.
To everything.
This heightened security is because of a string of physical attacks across the country, where people have used hand tools, firearms, and metal chains to cause blackouts and millions of dollars in damage.
So you can put all that stuff back in your car, you can secure everything actually.
The Bonneville Power Administration alone has seen at least 20 attacks just since late November.
20? Huh?
But security like this is
I don't know it's that much.
What's the security like at the power substations throughout the country?
It kind of runs the gamut. There are really rigorous security requirements for really important assets on the grid. For other facilities, you've got, less requirements.
The U.S. grid consists of about 11,500 power plants, 55,000 transmission substations, and 700,000 miles of power lines divided into 3 regional power grids. Securing the grid is part of the responsibilities of the Department of Energy.
Texas just does their own thing.
A lot more challenging lately. Acts of sabotage have more than doubled in the past decade, with limited arrests or known suspects.
Why is that?
Marking a worrying trend the government says may be linked to extremism.
How big of a risk to
I know why it is,
all of
because
them?
American politics have gone to fucking shit in the last decade, and everyone's just fucking pissed off, and so they're rebelling.
Are these kinds of attacks?
They're always a big risk.
It's way more decisive now than it
Anytime
was
you
before.
do damage to any piece of equipment on a power line or at a substation, there's the risk of the power going out. When that happens, street lights don't work, public safety's compromised, people who rely on medical devices at their homes can't use them. It can range anywhere from a minor inconvenience to somebody to a life-threatening situation.
Why don't we just put a security guard with every substation?
I think you're looking at a manpower issue. If you have to look at the expense, the impact, and at the end of the day,
11,000 security yards,
things that are going to make electricity so expensive.
I mean,
that
that's doable.
We price people out of being able to turn their lights on.
I think if you put into perspective how much we're spending on the military, we could get 10,000 bodyguards for power stations if this gets worse.
Years ago, the federal government warned that coordinated attacks in the 3 sections of regional power grids could cause a coast-to-coast blackout. The study said all it would take is strategically knocking out just 9 of our 55,000 substations. Taking out critical infrastructures such as water, power,
9?
and telecommunication has been a goal among violent extremists for years. Amy Hertzfeld-Koppel works for a nonprofit that monitors these groups.
When you heard about these attacks on power substations around the country, what were your thoughts?
It's really consistent with the tactics of anti-democracy and white nationalist groups in our region. These are groups that...
Dude, you get 9 Russian, CIA, whatever the fuck squads, sneak in, go to Texas, buy a bunch of ARs, drive to the 9 different power plants or 10 different power plants, take out all the power, the whole U.S. is out, and they can do whatever the fuck they want.
Are seeking to build political power. Their goal is to exhaust and collapse local government, make local government look weak, and it's part of a spectrum of attacks on democracy. It may seem distinct from things like anti-vaccine protests or disrupting, local commission and school board meetings. But
School board meetings.
It's all consistent with the goals of these groups.
In 2020,
That's not
right-wing
what they're
groups
doing.
circulated a document
School board
with a
meetings.
detailed how-to guide on how to cause chaos and collapse the government, including how to attack a power grid with guns.
Included in the tips on how to attack power stations was this: the power grid would be crippled for a very large area. Armor-piercing rounds shot into transformers would destroy them.
That's
and
it?
the guide went on to explain, but with the power off, when the lights didn't come back on, all hell will break loose, making conditions desirable for our race to once again take back what is ours.
These movements are sort of left unchecked. Could we see more attacks like this?
Well, we're already seeing in our region and across the country the heightened risk of political violence and the costs of not taking white nationalist and anti-democracy
That is
movements
crazy,
seriously.
dude.
These attacks on power grids are a clear but extreme example of how white
It's the
nationalist
white guys
and
with red
anti-democracy
hats.
groups seek to actually collapse civil infrastructure and, in some cases, even accelerate their race war fantasies.
Race war fantasies.
We wanted to see for ourselves how easy it is for bad actors to gain access to our critical infrastructure. So we saw a substation on the side of the road and pulled over.
Race war
So this is
fantasies.
the
We're not worried about
access road
China.
to a power substation.
We're not worried about
In
Russia.
terms of security, there's not much. There's like a locked gate with some barbed wire. But if you
But we want security guards to deal with
look, if you go up here,
race war
there's
fantasy.
this little fence.
White supremacist.
And if you got a minimum of grace, you can just kind of climb under it. And the substation is right there.
You don't think it's more likely that Russia's going to try to take out our power?
So I just
Or do like an
basically
EMP
walked
attack?
up a driveway and through a field, and here I am. There's a power substation. I could get closer if I wanted to. People have been up here shooting guns. There's all these signs up here riddled with bullet holes. So, I mean, yeah, it's not very well protected.
To protect our substations, we could surround each with stronger walls or install cameras or an armed guard at every station, but the customer would foot that bill, which would be astronomical. President Biden has committed
Guys, we already foot the bill of everything in the country with how absurd the taxes are and the spending habits of the federal government.
$2.3 billion to strengthen
Wait, I'm
and
starting to
modernize
sound
the
like
grid.
a...
But it could take years for states to see that money. So, as
I'm not
these
even-
attacks
I'm
wrap up,
not even white,
lawmakers
guys.
in affected areas have started to propose their own bills, including 24-hour security.
But like, yeah, it's expensive to get security guards, but you know what's more expensive? Is having to completely redo the entire power grid infrastructure.
The DOE says they'll keep working with federal and local law enforcement and state utilities to keep these structures resilient.
Would you say that the power grid in the United States is safe?
So for the most part, I think the U.S. electric grid is resilient and it is secure. The fact is we have to ensure that during these extreme circumstances, these catastrophic events, whether it's cyber or climate-based or physical, how does the grid rebound? How does it have that redundancy that if something is impacted, that doesn't mean that power needs to necessarily go out?
Out there circulating online, there are basically how-to guides, pretty detailed, pretty technical how-to guides on how to attack these power substations. What is to stop them?
We need to continue innovating and we need to continue building the grid of the future with that lens of security and resilience. That has to be
Well, that's a lot of
part
baloney.
of how we ensure the reliability and safety of the electric grids.
That's a
Are we
big
just
old
in a
nothing
situation
sandwich.
where we unfortunately have to accept that these things are going to get attacked from time to time?
At the end of the day, I'm concerned about all these risks, whether it is individuals who are trying to conduct just vandalism or whether it is something more sophisticated. This critical infrastructure is critical for a reason. They can impact the flow of power. That's a problem.
It's a big nothing sandwich. Do you know what'd be cool? personal, like, I forget the name, but they have these like personal nuclear reactors that they're working on. There's like a one house nuclear reactor. So imagine like if you have like a hospital, like hospitals have backup generators, right? What if they had their own little nuclear reactor that runs just for the hospital? Now I know what you guys are thinking, but I don't remember all the details, but they're actually fairly safe.